On this episode of AFPC Insights, I'm joined by AFPC Senior Vice President Ilan Berman, who traveled to Morocco earlier in April. Hey, Ilan, welcome back.
Thanks, Annie. It was actually a really interesting time to do that because the sort of the big issue, and one of the reasons why I was so interested in going to Morocco is that there's a lot of things that are happening there, and a lot of things that are happening that really are sort of behind the headlines in terms of what's happening sort of in the broader Middle East. The big issue, of course, for them is the question of the Western Sahara and normalization with Israel. And those two things are separate issues, but they're very closely interlinked because late last year, in December of 2020, Morocco became the fourth country to join the so-called Abraham Accords when it announced publicly that it was going to begin normalizing relations with Israel. And those relations have existed for decades. There's a massive Moroccan origin diaspora in Israel, for example. There have been years upon years of quiet political contacts and economic ties, but this was the first time that the relationship was really breaking out into the open. And the Trump administration at the time contributed a really important piece of the puzzle because it granted formal U.S. recognition of Moroccan sovereignty over the territory of the Western Sahara, which the Moroccans have administered since the mid-1970s, but which in international legal terms is still, the sovereignty is not determined. It's still something of a frozen conflict, despite the fact that the Moroccans have invested a tremendous amount of money as well as political capital in building up the region and in integrating it into the country as a whole. So those two things were sort of the pivot point that happened at the end of last year. But there's a new sheriff in town. There's a new administration in Washington, and the Biden administration has said that it plans to do a policy review of pretty much every foreign policy stance that its predecessor had taken, which includes the question of U.S. recognition over the Western Sahara. And so that's something that the Moroccans are watching, are waiting for a formal decision. There's a lot of confidence there that, the broader relationship is sound. Morocco, after all, was the first country to recognize the United States after America's independence. Right? So there's a long-standing political relationship there. The fundamentals are very very sound. But at the same time, the Moroccans are nervous or sort of a little jittery about what the policy review that the Biden administration is undertaking right now, what that may look like, and what the impact is going to be on the larger relationship.
It was good to talk to you. Thank you so much. And I will talk to you soon.
Oh, my pleasure.